Welcome to the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region Incorporated Diversity and Disability YouTube channel. Your Life, Your Voice program, where self-advocates and professionals in the disability sector are interviewed.
The Diversity and Disability Project would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live and recognise their continued connection to land, water and community. We pay respects to elders past, present and emerging.
Nothing about us without us. We pay respects to all self-advocates who have worked hard over the years and still working tirelessly for their rights, supporting others with disabilities and human rights for all.
This channel is for people with disabilities who aspire to seek self-advocacy role models to inspire change in their everyday lives. Nothing about us without us. Choice and control are central themes. Every interview is as unique as you and I.
And it has a fundamental universal human rights ethos of respect for persons with disabilities, having their views heard and acknowledged. After all, it's all in the name. Your life, your voice.
Be the voice of change in your life.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Your Life, Your Voice. My name is Julie Skiveris and I'd like to welcome my co-host, Lara McFarland. Hi Lara, how you doing?
Hi Julie, good to be here on this spring day.
Yes, it's quite warm now, isn't it? So I'd like to welcome today our guest speaker, Peter Crowle from the RTO Registered Trading Organisation and the Compliance Manager of the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region. Welcome, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Julie. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. How about we kick off with some questions?
Yep, and I'm going to start that off today. It's good to meet you, Peter. Thank you for coming along to join us today.
Most welcome.
I was wondering if you could explain your role at the Migrant Resource Centre and what does it mean to be an RTO compliance manager? Because those are all words that I don't understand.
Okay. Well, as an RTO manager, I'm responsible to the regulator, which is the Victorian Regulations and Qualifications Authority, who our RTO is registered with, to ensure that our RTO is compliant with all the regulations and standards for registration of the RTO. I'm also responsible to ensure that our RTO adheres to the requirements of our funding contracts with various organisations, including the Victorian State Government.
So, can we take a step back now? Can you tell us what is an RTO? And I'm assuming that means that the Migrant Resource Centre, who you work for, they are an RTO?
The Migrant Resource Centre is a not-for-profit organisation. We have different arms of the business. One of them, of course, is the training arm. So we're a registered training organisation. We can deliver here in Victoria under the auspices of the Victorian Regulations and Qualifications Authority. So we have a very small scope of registration, as we call it, which is the number of qualifications that an RTO is allowed to offer to external students. We have a Certificate 4 in disability, and we have some Certificate 3 and 4 qualifications in community services. We're very different from a lot of RTOs because RTOs tend to get, the more they have on their scope of registration, the more qualifications they can offer. Obviously, the more financial they become. But we're not here to be a financial cash cow for the organisation. We're here to be able to train people the way we want them to be trained and certified, and that they're going to go out and work well in the community with people with disabilities or in the community services sector itself.
Can I just ask a question, Peter and Lara? So, just a question about the history of why people need to be qualified to work in the disability sector, because I have worked in this sector for over a decade now. When I started in this sector, we were actually put into day centres to resource support workers and clients in self-advocacy. That's our whole reason for being in this sector, and what we really truly believe in. And self-advocacy promotes choice and control. And what I found when I started doing this work in the day centres is that the support workers have been working in the sector for 20, 30 years, and very kind people. But I think it takes more than kindness to work in the sector and to recognise your biases and choice and control are actually a human right. And so we sort of like came across opposition with support workers that have been in the sector for 20 or 30 years without being qualified. Can you expand on that, Peter?
I think I'm not exactly sure of the date that you were required qualifications to work in the disability sector. However, I think for the sector itself, it's given family members and people with a disability a lot more confidence in the quality of the care that they're provided, knowing that somebody has been through a extensive training program and come out with a qualification, and they've also had to do a work placement as part of that qualification, and they've been signed off by an employer. So I think it does give people with a disability and their families a higher level of confidence in the system.
Yes, so also a few years ago, maybe about 5 years ago, there's also a register. So if there's a so all people all disability support workers have to be on a register. I believe it's compulsory now. So and the reason for that is that if there's some sort of abuse in any level, that the person receiving the service, whether it's a day centre or whether it's one-on-one, they can actually make a complaint. And I'm not sure the whole process, but there's a process established by state or federal government. I think it's a state-run initiative, where if you're not happy with the service or suspect abuse, you can actually report the support worker, and there are processes for that also.
I think your comments too about the regulations required to work in the sector. I know the home and community care sector, I deal with employers all the time, and what they tell me is possibly within up to 6 months, it will be a mandatory requirement to have a qualification in the sector to be working, because they're no longer going to accept people without a qualification.
You know, I've found, because I also run a parent with children with disabilities support group, and sometimes the parent wants the older sibling or the other sibling to provide support for their child and then be paid through the NDIS. And they said, what do you need? What sort of qualification do you need to take someone out shopping? You know, that they just think it's a bit of a joke, quite honestly. But it's very important for people to be working in the sector to understand the rights, the human rights of the person with disability, and to treat them with respect and dignity. And at over 18, there's choice and control. You know, even if you're minor, there's choice and control. But yes, so they found that a little bit confronting that for the sibling to be paid, they have to have a qualification. Nevertheless, it's very important that people understand a lot the disability sector and the social model, which we will talk about, in this interview also. Larissa, any comments, or would you like to continue?
Oh, I've got lots of thoughts. I guess it's reflects just what you said, Julie, reflects maybe on the fact that we don't get taught about human rights, generally speaking, in our lives. It's like this expectation we're supposed to understand it, but I don't know that most of us do unless we really think about it. I mean, I don't know, maybe they teach human rights in schools now, but I didn't get that training. So I think that, again, it's important to have a qualification which does remind people that disabled people have human rights as well. Yeah. But moving along, Peter, back to you, because you're our guest and our subject. Can you tell us a bit more about like yourself or your own experience in the disability sector?
Okay. Well, previously to working here at MRC, I worked for a disability support service in Collingwood, a reasonably large organisation, Independence Australia. They had a large workforce of people who were working, providing in-home care for clients with a disability. And they also had a business arm selling wound care products, disability aids, etc. But my focus was just purely with the registered training organisation within Independence Australia. We trained our own workforce. So a lot of our students were not external students who just came in, got the qualification, then left. They tended to stay with our organisation. I was there for around 4 years working with Independence Australia. So I had a very good relationship with the training staff and met a lot of people with disabilities. And I actually had one staff member on my team who had a disability, and he was fantastic to work with.
Can I just get some clarification, because I'm a bit confused. When you say external, what does that mean? Is there something about external students?
I mean, well, a lot of organisations train for anyone within the community. Our organisation at Independence Australia was basically training its own staff, so they were going to end up being staff members, and they'd be on a roster and providing care and support to people with disabilities in their own home.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Thanks for that clarification, because I was a little bit confused. So, okay, excellent. How about we move on? So, Peter, how does the social model of disability inform your work as an RTO manager?
Well, I guess the social model helps us recognise barriers that make life harder for people with a disability, and trying to remove those barriers creates equality and offers people with a disability more choice and more independence. As an RTO manager, I need to continue to remove barriers where possible, and ensure that when I'm hiring additional staff, trainers and assessors and stuff, that I do not discriminate against people with a disability. And as I mentioned, I did have a member of my staff in my last employment who was had a disability and was in a wheelchair. So I needed to take into account what he felt very comfortable doing, what he didn't feel comfortable doing, and try and change the workplace around so that he felt much more comfortable. So simple things like lowering the height of cabinets, so that he wasn't forced to try and overstretch and put things on a higher shelf, and we could use those for other areas to make him feel more comfortable and get his work done.
That sounds great. I'm wondering about, I'm thinking about people with invisible disability, because most disabilities that exist are actually invisible, and how how you navigate that, because I imagine that there's people on your staff may have invisible disability who may or may not disclose. How does that work for you?
Look, I'm a very, for me personally, I feel like I'm a very open person to come and talk to. And I'm happy to talk with my staff individually where I need to, or if my staff wants to have a private discussion with me to see how I can assist them better in the workplace and with their life in general. And so I think it's just a matter of being willing to talk to people.
Yeah, I think as a manager, openness in today's world, even in like yesterday's world, what is very important because people with disabilities and employment rates are sometimes very low rates due to discrimination. I know that I feel like I've experienced this discrimination at interviews in the past, and it took me after I got my degree with very good marks. It took me a long time to find work, and it was only through tragedy, was personal tragedy, a personal illness, that I actually found D&D. So we won't get into that today, but the point is that people with disabilities experience a higher levels of disadvantage because of disability and employment outcomes. So yes, I think that things are getting better really slowly, and I think that I know another case where this young man can't disclose his disability because he's been discriminated against, and he has an invisible disability, and I'm trying to work with the family to address that barrier. But yeah, it's very slow going.
Yes, yeah. Can I add to that too? That because things are changing, which we see slowly. There's change, but like there is a history of of ongoing discrimination and ableism that people with disability face every day. So I know personally, as someone with an invisible disability, that I often don't disclose because it doesn't feel safe, and part of that is because of my history. And I guess it's something to think about. How do we enable people to feel safe to disclose? Is an ongoing issue, I think. Yeah.
You're talking about the way the world's changing a little bit. Maybe in even early schooling, I think teachers there are much more aware of the need of educating children the right way, with a changing way they talk about people with disabilities too. And I think children are probably more aware than what they would have been previously.
Fingers crossed.
Well, that's right.
I have done a lot of work with the education department through my parent group, and I do believe that there are lots of changes happening in this space. Yeah, and as we know, Larissa, the social model of disability focuses on the environment. It does not blame the person. So what changes can we do around the environment to make things accessible? There's lots of work at the moment in the education sector to educate young adults and matching them with jobs that they can do. As Peter has said in his organisation, it's the same sort of context. So identify strength-based model, identify the strength of the person and work with that, and modify the employment outcomes to the person's strengths. So and there's lots of work being done in the sector on this level. Would we would we like to move on?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So, how has your experience in the sector encouraged people with disability to reach their full potential?
I think of the particular staff member I was referring to earlier. It's about having a frank discussion with that person, saying, finding out what they like to do, what they don't like to do, what they're comfortable doing. Um, Nobody can do every job that they think they can do. So I think it's a matter of having that frank discussion with someone, and tailoring their work to what they feel a level they're comfortable at. Um, but people with a disability, I've found to be very, very good to work with. Um, they've been very conscientious, and I think of one guy in particular who would come to work. It was like 1.5 kilometres he would come on his wheelchair, and I, rain, hail, or shine, he would turn up for his shift. So I think of people who don't have a disability wouldn't go to that length to ensure that they kept coming to work. So there's a lot of really positive things with working with people with disability as well.
Yeah, just on comment on that, I have made some connections with my past, with my best friend actually from high school, who has a couple of members of her family with disabilities, and the older brother, yeah, exactly what you said, Peter. He lives for his work, and very conscientious. And I met this guy when I was working in the public service a long time ago, and I had a chat with him. We were both much younger, and he asked him what he was doing, and he was very excited. He was very excited because he was very proud that he was cleaning toilets. And some of us may think, well, why is this person so excited about cleaning toilets? But it's dignity, and I don't believe that any role or employment is like embarrassing, like if that's the right word. I think it's. I was very proud that this young man at that time was very enthusiastic about his job, and I left feeling, if we all had this great attitude, the world will be a better place. It doesn't matter what we do; just do it with pride and enthusiasm.
Sure, I agree. Although I have to say that lots of disabled people find it's not so much at the job itself, it's the way they're being managed. Sometimes if you're cleaning a toilet and you're given full rein to clean the toilet, or if you've got someone coming in and telling you off all the time, or trying to overmanage you because you're a disabled person, that can make the job very unpleasant.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I suppose, um, you know, the attitudes of maybe managers or employers or people with disabilities may be a barrier to people having a positive attitude in the workplace. And I think that's a really good point, Larissa. Yeah, and yeah, so yeah, and him, yeah, so maybe that could be something that employers can look at, and maybe in your work, Peter, when you're dealing with employees and people with disabilities, maybe that's something you can discuss at a higher managerial level.
Yes. Look, I don't think a lot of employers uh, understand the value in having somebody with a disability working for them. Um, I think sometimes it sounds terrible. I think sometimes they put it in a too hard basket. But I think if people will give people a fair go and a chance, they'd be very, very surprised, some employers, with loyalty and the attitude that people with a disability can bring to an organisation.
And I think it's also like the social model isn't just about the barriers in society. It's also, I actually call the social model of disability model of humanness. That's my latest thing this month, because I think it actually talks about human beings and our diversity, and it's learning to see that disabled people aren't the other. Like we all belong to the human race, and we all are different. Most of us are going to experience disability at some point in our life, if not our own bodies and minds, then as carers. And so, it's sort of it's the social model, I think, tries to teach us not to be afraid of disabled people as well. That's, I think, one of its aims, I hope. I mean, I think that's what's useful when you're a non-disabled person looking at the social model of disability. You get out of it, hopefully, that, oh my God, we're actually all the same, and we just need to have less fear and communicate with each other. Yes. I mean, as a disabled person, when I read the social model, when I understand the social model, I come at it from a different perspective, and within it I see disability pride. I see a way for myself as a disabled person to end the shame that I might experience, or the way that stigma treats me. Instead, I go, actually, I am a full human being, and I deserve respect. So, we come at it from different places, but I think in the end it's trying to break down those attitude barriers.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I was actually going to say something else, but maybe that will be in the next question. I can.
Okay.
But we sort of answered that. Our next question was, what needs to be done to support more employment of people with disabilities within organisations and companies? Actually, we haven't completely answered it. There is much to be done.
Yeah, look, as I said, I think many employers and members of the public aren't aware of what people with a disability can do. Employers need to be aware that people with a disability can be fantastic employees. They're dedicated. They're generally highly excited because they've actually got a role which they thought they would never get. And employers need to be more aware of what a person can do in the workplace rather than what they can't do. People sometimes tend to focus on, well, this person can't do that. We'll focus on what they can do and what they can bring to the organisation.
And one of our biggest assets is, in my opinion, is our creative problem-solving skills. I'm an artist, and I use the symbol of the kite, because kites fly highest against the wind, and that's what a lot of disabled people have to do in their lives when we live in a world that isn't welcoming or built for us, that we have to solve problems and creatively come up with solutions to find our place. And I think that, that's a great skill that we have that is often really unrecognised.
Yeah.
What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I agree. They are problem solvers. People with a disability have to overcome many challenges, and challenges end up making you a better character, a better person, I think, if you can overcome those things. And people with the disabilities really amaze me with some of the things that they can do.
Yeah, and I think there's also still, until this day, a stigma with apprentice, and it's very superficial. We know it's superficial, but it's got to be something that people with disabilities have to really live with their whole lives. I think until education gets into the mainstream, I think that this is a part of our life, and I've definitely experienced discrimination based on appearances. At times, I feel, of course, people are not going to tell you that straight out. When I have started working in different organisations, you know, there's sort of like a wow factor. And I'm thinking to myself, interesting. It's interesting to observe the wow factor. Because in my view, I'm just trying to do the best I can do, and usually the best I can do is is um, is exceeds the benchmark of any employee. So I've had to deal with that, and you know, I could have had another 20 years of work experience if someone saw through that before.
Can I at this point quote the great Graham Innes, who is our ex Human Rights Commissioner, and his quote he made many years ago is the soft bigotry of low expectations. Have you heard that before, Peter?
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. And so that idea that it's a discrimination in itself to have low expectations of disabled people, because that often only enables us to rise to only a certain level, or to learn to a certain level, because we're not even permitted to expect more.
But I think as an employer, if you have a frank and open discussion with one of your employees who's got a disability, and you actually talk to them and find out about what they can do and what they want to do, it changes things around a little bit, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
How about we move on? So, what sort of roles have you experienced seeing people with disability fulfilled? We've spoken about this a little bit.
Well, just within my own work, I mean, I've had somebody working with me in a administrative role. We've had people come out with us and do talks to new students. I don't see that there's many roles they can't do. There's no reason why a person with a disability can't be a trainer, or why they couldn't be in front of house at reception. There's lots of jobs that people could do.
We're even starting to see doctors in wheelchairs, which is forever. Yeah. Sorry, wheelchair users. Sorry.
Yeah.
So attitudes are changing.
Yeah, slowly. Yes.
Are changing.
Yeah, but I don't see it as it's so much of a barrier. I think there's just opportunities there. It's just people don't explore them enough, I don't think, or certainly employers anyway.
Yeah, I think it takes really courage to be a person with disability. When you say people don't explore them, I think that's a little bit not right, because you know, people with disabilities get so many put downs and so many barriers that's put in front of them, and so, you know, we are human, and we have breaking points, you know, and my breaking point came with severe illness and depression, and ended up in hospital because a doctor did not diagnose me properly, you know, and so the barriers that people with disability face are much more entrenched, I think, and so we have to try 100 times harder to get, like, you know, to get our points across, to get the work that we deserve, to get the pay that we deserve, you know. So yeah, so there's lots of barriers still out there, but I do agree that, you know, things are getting better on that level. So yeah, so any other comments?
I'd just say that like I've worked with a small number of people with disability, and I don't feel I'm certainly don't put myself in an expert category, because I'm not, and but there would be a lot of people that even that I know who would actually have no idea what it's like for a person to have a disability, and the struggle that they have in their daily lives. So I think it's a matter of getting that word out there and educating people more, and it starts probably at that school level, I think.
Yeah, someone I know recently that has had a disability in later life, has said that they feel that they know a bit more now about disability, and even though the disability is temporary, well, sort of temporary, is I'm not really too sure now, but they're much more aware of it, and so I think people can have empathy, I think, and people do have empathy, but until you've walked a while in our moccasins, and let's face it, we can't really experience all disabilities. So empathy is a great tool, and knowledge and understanding, and setbacks. They make people stronger people. How you get through them, be creative. Like we're saying. Yeah. So yeah, but I think that why does someone have to have a disability at times to really have compassion for others? That's a really serious question, and it can't be answered. I don't think can't really be answered, but that seems to be on some levels with some people. Um, yeah, it seems to be the case at times. Any other comments? No.
No.
Not right now.
So cool. So I think we've answered why are people with disabilities good employees. So I think we've answered that pretty well.
We could ask Peter about reasonable adjustments, and how have you been involved? How does reasonable adjustments work when you work with disabled people?
Well, I know in the training world, one of the requirements in the standards for registering as an RTO is that you provide opportunities for reasonable adjustment in the assessment method for a person with a disability. A lot of RTOs would never had to experience how you do that, but I know in the organisation I worked for, sometimes you would be able to do things and assess somebody in a simulated environment. Now that you wouldn't normally offer that to somebody who didn't have a disability, but it made sense that the student could demonstrate competency even in a simulated environment. So that's actually a requirement of one of the standards that we do make opportunities for reasonable adjustment in the assessment process.
I think I was involved with one of those when I was completing my disability 4 certificate, and I forget exactly what happened. It was a little while ago, but I think I did a simulated assessment.
Yeah.
For some reason, which fails me at the moment to recall, and so I was able to finish off this particular unit. Because I could do the task, basically acting in an acting role. So simulation is another word for acting. I think is that fair enough? Is that a fair enough comparison, guys? So yes, yes.
Or the world stage.
Yeah, the world stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think well, I have a bit of art in me, Larissa. I'm not like art that you do, but I've got a bit of artistry in me. So yes, so we're all different, yeah. We have a lot of different strengths and weaknesses. I can't draw for Buckley's, not even a bloody, simple drawing, but Larissa is amazing artist. And what's interesting about your story is not that you're an amazing artist, that's a given, but how actually that occurred. So it occurred through disability and exploring your recovery. Do you want to talk a bit about that, Larissa?
Sure, but I'm not quite sure how it's completely relevant. But yes, I did become an artist. I had no artistic inclination as a child or an adult. But when I was 29, I had a brain injury and the world looked different. And everything, my visual capacity changed, and it inspired me to try to draw. And I was very bad at drawing, but I think talent lies in the passion. Not in the, well, I don't really believe in talent. I think, you develop a skill, and I practiced a lot. So I guess I learned how to draw.
Yeah, and I think it is relevant to this interview, particularly to what sort of roles have you experienced with people with disabilities fulfilled. So you learned this skill and you work in that sector. So I think,
although it is interesting, I mean, I'm thinking the whole interview I've been thinking, because I guess I would call myself a freelancer. I don't think I've actually ever used that word in relation to myself, but I guess that's what I am as an artist and as a self advocate or somebody passionate about disability rights. Then all the work I do is as a freelancer, as an independent, and it does mean that I don't really haven't really been able to access training really, or I make it up as I go along. I mean, obviously I'm not making it up, I'm building on my skills, but it does feel a bit of a weird place sometimes, because I don't have the qualification. There isn't really qualifications for the work I do. Activists there's no school we go to. We learn from each other. So yeah, a lot of our skills are stuff we learn through talking with each other and working with other disabled people, which is mostly the people I work with. Yeah, hence my ignorance about anything to do with RTOs. And that, yeah. I mean, in my world, I suppose, when I think about reasonable adjustments, I might think about what we call the access rider, which is where if you're going into a gig, maybe you're a performer or you're a speaker, or I'm putting on an exhibition, I might write out a list of the things that I need access to enable me to be there to participate on an equal level. Yeah. This is and I guess it's probably similar to what organisations might be doing in reasonable adjustments, but it's very much on the individual to come up with a list of things that you might need to support. So if you're a wheelchair user, you need ramps, and you would put that in your access rider. And I guess the issue is then you have to advocate for it. There isn't really an authority or a body or anybody to support you to with those things. You might be in a space where you're just saying, look, I can't. I had this situation recently where I was expected to turn up somewhere at 8 o'clock to install my artwork, and I was like, no, I can't do that. Due to my disability, which isn't necessarily relevant for me to I don't have to disclose, but my access needs is that I need to be here at 10 o'clock. And it actually was a little bit hard to assert for a while. But that's a reasonable adjustment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and thank you, Larissa, for giving us some real life examples. So yeah, it makes our YouTube station more relevant rather than question and answer. So I think our life experiences are brings a lot more relevance to our listening viewing population. So,
but I guess it. Oh, sorry, Julie, but I was just thinking more about it and going, it is the work I do, or the work we do as disability self-advocates, activists, and as an artist. They are really unregulated environments. So we should just be congratulating ourselves a little bit there about trying to do it all because as also we're not funded very well. The arts is not funded, and disability services tend to get funded, but not necessarily disability self-advocacy. Yeah, so that's another whole topic, I guess. Yeah.
It's hard work. Everyone will acknowledge who works in the sector. It's hard work. It's usually underfunded work. It's work that I'm a freelancer also, and that poses lots of issues that I'm not happy with, which I've tried to address over the years. But hey, changing structures in society and in workplaces, it's a long process, which may not happen in my lifetime or our lifetime, Larissa. But we're building off other activists, and their work. So it's always a building block type of structure that we look at. Hopefully, our efforts down the road will help other people with disabilities reach their goals, and not having to reinvent the wheel all over again. So that's my dream for the future. When I'm no longer here, that'll be our legacy, Larissa, and
I hope so.
everyone that works in the sector. So, moving right along. So, are there any government bodies that assist employers with reasonable adjustments?
I probably don't have enough experience to talk on that topic. Other than so, I know there are things like the federal government employer employment assistance fund, and there's a lot of fantastic organisations and disability employment services, Wise Employment, Scope, and those sort of places. But I'm not fully aware enough to speak on that really, Julie.
That's fine. As long as people are aware that there are government bodies, organisations, the Employment Assistance Fund does provide access to reasonable adjustments. And I suppose we can leave it at that.
So that would be things like for workplace redesign to accommodate a person who's in a wheelchair, or things like that type of thing, would it be?
Yes, so our manager, Larissa, Krishna Sorian, has reasonable adjustments. He's been a manager of DD for over 15 years now. So he has cerebral palsy, and he uses his foot for the mouse and 2 fingers to type. So he's got like adjustments to technology, say for instance, or chairs, or we have when we move buildings, there was an issue with access. So he has access from a certain point. We bought a ramp to access the other entrance of the door, other entrance of the building. So there were things that were put in place because of Christians' access needs. So yes, so I would say we're about to wind things up now, and so thank you, Peter, for
That's all right. You're most welcome.
accepting our invitation.
Nice to talk with you too.
So I'll just go to end our program, and we can stay on for a little while longer.
Catch us on Your Life, Your Voice YouTube channel live every Monday fortnight or on demand.
We would like your comments and suggestions on topics that you would like us to explore. Leave your comments on YouTube comments section.
Please feel free to email us on dndyourlifeyourvoice@gmail.com or contact us via the Migrant Resource Centre Northwest Region Inc. Phone number 1300 676 044. 1300 676 044.
Diversity in Disability is a project of the Migrant Resource Centre, Northwest Region, Incorporated, and would like to thank the management for funding this project, especially living through the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has been difficult for people with disabilities living in isolation.